Gopi Nana Manava Irivarudavude Yasudanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yasudanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatera Manachare Yamunatera Manachare Jai Hurat Umadva Kunyavikhavure Jai Rad Madhuva Kunyavikhavure Gopijana Balaba Irivarut Harunte Gopijana Balaba Irivarut Harunte Yasudanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yasudanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatera Manachare Yamunatera Manachare Jayarat Madhuva Kunyavikhavure Jayarat Madhuva Kunyavikhavure Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parabhidikacharya also Teta Sutashi Shiva His Divine Grace Savaya Chanana Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anandakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shitwaita Gadadha Srivasti Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Govardhan Sayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Ki Jai Mathuranam Ki Jai Jagadeva Swami Ki Jai Yamunamari Ki Jai Srimati Vilasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamati Didamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nivasesha Shunyavadi Paschachate Shatarni. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 38th chapter, Text 39. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nivedya Nam Achatithaye Samvaya Shantam Adritaha Anang Vahu Gunam Medyam Ashadayo Paharad Vivahu Nivedya Chachithoye Sangvaya Shantamadritaha Anambahu Gunam Vejam Shvadayo Paharad Vivahu Nivedya Chachithoye Sangvaya Shantamadritaha Anambahu Gunam Vejam Shvadayo Paharad Vivahu Anivejagam Chatithoye Samvaya Shrantamadritaha Anambahu Gunam Vejam Shvadayo Paharad Vivahu. Sambhaya Shantamadritaha Anambahu Gunam Vejam Shvadayo Paharad Vivahu Vivahu. Okay. Nivedya, presenting in charity. Gang, a cow. Cha, and. Atithaye, to the guest. Samvaya, massaging. Shantam, who was tired. Adritaha, with great respect. Anam, cook food. Bahu Gunam, of various tastes. Medyam, suitable for offering. Shadiha, faithfully. Upaharat, offered. Vivahu, the Almighty Lord. Translation: the Almighty Lord Balarama presented a Krura with the gift of a cow, massaged his feet to relieve him of fatigue, and then with great respect and faith, fed him suitably prepared food of various fine tastes. Repeat. The Almighty Lord Balarama presented a Krura with the gift of a cow, massaged his feet to relieve him of fatigue, and then with great respect and faith, fed him suitably prepared food of various fine tastes. So, purport by the servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, Akrura went to Krishna and Balaram's house on the 12th lunar day, on which one should not break a fast at night. However, Akrura dispensed with this formality because he was eager to receive food in the Lord's house. And so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states, among the various upacharas, or items offered, was a cow. They brought a cow in front of him for giving pleasure to the eyes. Majam Pure indicates that the rice was taken on the Dwadasi as a breakfast from the Ekadasi Vrata. That day was Dwadasi because 2 days later on the Chaturdashi was the day of Bhuta Raja Puja, when Kamsa was killed. There's a rule that one should not break the fast in the night, but Akrura broke the rule because he wanted to eat at Krishna's house. And Jiva Goswami states, Akrura did not refuse because Balaram was devoted advataha. By this, the sweetness of Krishna and Balaram was displayed in this manner. Akrura forgot about the powers of the Lord and became obedient to their will. Balaram then massaged him. The verbs may be taken in a causative sense. That is, he had others massage and offer him food. So either he did or he had others do. Balaram massaged Akrura's feet. That's Sanatana Goswami, sorry. Why did Akrura allow this? Balaram was devoted, he acted hospitably, atitiye. Akrura tolerated because of Balaram's affection. He offered him pure, major, and tasty food. This was mainly milk products. Balaram sat close to him and personally served him, upaharat, asking him to eat more, serving him eagerly with sweet words, shruti-all. Balaram was competent to do all of this, vibahu. He did everything perfectly. And again, Vivejagama tithoye sangvaya shantamadrita anangnam bahunam vejang shrateyopaharad vivahu. So, Omagana Timidandasha Vinanjana Shalakya Chakshuram Vidikam Yena Tasmai Shi Gurveda Maha. So, several topics here. First topic I'm going to talk about is hospitality, which is really important. And the word used in this verse, atithaye, I don't have to remember that, which generally Prabhupada translated as guest, but if you really take apart the word, it means atiti, just like we have different titis in our Vaishnava calendar, right? We have different days. So we know what? That Radhastami is coming up on Saturday, right? So we know that's a titi. And also you have the Dwadasi Ekadasi, which is mentioned here in this verse, Dwadasi Ekadasi, Trayodasi, Chaturdasi, etc. like that have to do with the moon. So basically, titi means like a day or appointment sometimes, it is translated. And atitya means the person who comes without an appointment, which is really interesting. So in the Vedic system, the person who comes without an appointment, sometimes there's this statement, what, atiti narayan. Some of you may have heard that before. That it's not that he is Narayan, but he's treated just like Narayan. So Akrura did not have an appointment. It's not that he texted Balaram and Krishna and he said, I'm coming on this particular day. Obviously the means of communication was not so, I don't want to say it wasn't so advanced, but it wasn't so decrepit or Kali Yugish. It's like now we're, communicating instantaneously. And it's really contaminated the mind. Prabhupada didn't really like to use the phone that much. Of course, there's that typical story when Prabhupada first got a phone. They called him up in the middle of the night and they asked him, how are you doing? He He didn't like it. Once in a while, he would use the phone. I was listening to Prabhupada Memory last night, and Prabhupada, this is when the devotees actually were taking Prabhupada for granted, and Prabhupada considered that the Gaudiya Math, some of the envious people in the Gaudiya Math were influencing his disciples through one of his disciples who was in India. I'm not going to mention the name, because it's not really that important. And then Prabhupada, I was listening to the memory of Bhagawan last night, because then when I take prasadam, I listen to Prabhupada memories. And Bhagawan was saying, he was in the shower and he got, Prabhupada's on the phone. So he didn't say, what do you mean Prabhupada's on the phone? So anyway, he ran down, put his gamsha on, of course, and Prabhupada said, come immediately. And Prabhupada called Lokanuga, Prabhupada called a whole bunch of people in order to actually start the GBC, because Prabhupada wanted to leave America because he felt, there's poison in the air, because the devotees, for a variety of reasons, had begun to neglect Prabhupada. I mean, there were a number of things. Prabhupada walked in this room, and the lady who cleaned the room his picture was upside down. Someone had put salt in the sweet rice. When someone was asking Prabhupada, as far as his immigration form was concerned, have you ever committed any criminal activities? Prabhupada said, just see, what do they do? So anyway, Prabhupada used the phone in that particular. In emergency situations, Prabhupada used the phone. Anyway, that's not the topic of today's class. I really got far afield. So anyway, this is a Titi Narayan. So Akrura is being received like you would receive God. And to show someone the cow is very auspicious. It calms one's mind down when you see a cow. In fact, in some of the South Indian temples, the first thing that deities are supposed to see in the morning is a cow with a calf. I've been there. They open up the curtains, there's a cow with a calf, and then, of course, the cow or the calf, they pass urine on the floor. But that's actually auspicious, like that. So, very, very important. So, another point about this Atiti Narayan thing is that even if, Prabhupada says, even if someone is your enemy, he doesn't suspect or should not suspect that he's your enemy when you go to his house. You treat him so nicely. And then there's many examples of this in Prabhupada's writing in the Vedic literature. There's the example of Jarasandha, when Krishna and Bhimsena and Arjuna, dressed as brahmanas, wanted to fight with Jarasandha, trick Jarasandha. And so they arrived at Jarasandha's place. Jarasandha actually saw that they were Kshatriyas. He wasn't stupid. Because when you see a Brahmin with muscles, it's like some of our devotees, they're working out and trying to develop six-pack abs. And so when you see a Brahmin, and with, the sign of the bowstrings and the finger, when you're shooting a bow, it definitely leaves calluses or whatever on the hands. You can see that someone's a Kshatriya. And so he saw that. And even after it was revealed that this was Krishna, his old enemy or eternal enemy or whatever you might call it, and Bhimsena and Arjuna, he still treated them nicely and he gave them what they want. Oh, you want to fight? Sure. Not only that, but for the whole time that they were fighting, it was 28 days, they actually sat down and enjoyed hospitality. And it's the enemy. I mean, he's such a bad guy, this Jarasandha, that he was going to sacrifice all these kings just to get power, just like chop their heads off, Something like they used to do with the cannibals. The cannibal would actually, cannibal tribe, they would actually eat their opposing tribes or whatever like that, or the soldiers of the opposing tribes, and this way they would absorb their energy. Sort of like a black magic thing, tantric thing. So that was also being practiced by Jarasandha. But in spite of that, he had that hospitality. Amazing, isn't it? Amazing how deep in the, I'm just trying to point out how deep in the culture it is. For those of us in the Western world, it's hard to understand, culture, you treat a guest nicely, Like me, I have a sign on my door, don't knock. Go away, don't knock. So this is a really important point here, as far as this particular verse is concerned. And then, another story, just one other story about that. This is another one, it's in the Mahabharata, that once upon a time Duryodhana went to Grandfather Bhishma, and he said to Grandfather Bhishma, "You're not fighting seriously. You got to kill these Pandavas." And so what happened is Grandfather Bhishma took out 5 arrows and he said, "I vow, with these 5 arrows, I am going to kill 5 Pandavas." So, he's not going to break his vow. He's Bhishma, isn't it? He's Dhridavrata. He's determined. That's it. Pandavas are dead. So what happens is that Krishna tells Arjuna, "Why don't you go visit Duryodhana tonight?" After the war's over, sometimes they would eat with each other and everything like that. So what happened is that Krishna and Arjuna go to Duryodhana. Duryodhana says, "Oh, you're my guest, Titi Narayan. So what do you want? I mean, if you want your kingdom, you can have your kingdom back." He knew Arjuna wasn't going to ask for that, because that would have been, Kshatriyas are not supposed to do that stuff. That sort of charity, no way. It's prohibited. So he knew. And Arjuna said, because, anyway, Duryodhana had kept those 5 arrows because he knew that something might else happen. So Arjuna said, "Can I have those 5 arrows?" And that would have been the end of the battle of Kurukshetra, right? The bad guys would have won. Pretty interesting, isn't it? So, therefore, that's the very important culture which even demons would follow. Very, very, very important. Now, the other topic of this class is the rules, especially, I was mentioned in this particular verse in purport that you're not supposed to break the Ekadasi fast on the night of the Dwadasi. And actually, there's a lot of rules for fasting on Ekadasi that we're not even aware of, that I may be slightly aware of, like the day before you're supposed to do something, there's a restriction. The day after Ekadasi, there's a restriction. You have to break during the Ekadasi Purana, right? Sometimes we have this thing in the calendar. You have 10 seconds, 7:26 to 7:26 and 30 seconds. We have to do a countdown, basically. Prabhupada was never really into it. Nowadays, of course, people do get a little more sophisticated as far as the timing is concerned. Prabhupada at one point said, if it's Ekadasi in Mayapur, it's Ekadasi everywhere. And now there's all these complicated things. If you go from Hillsborough to Durham, it's a different Ekadasi day. I mean, sometimes Hillsborough to Atlanta, it's different. Especially, you can't use the ISKCON calendar anymore that they send out from LA. It has, it says variant days, but you can't figure, what is variant? What does variant mean? There's a variant day. So the question is about these rules. You have all these different rules, and I have some quotes here that are really interesting. Now many of these rules are in the Hari Bhakti Vilas. And there are rules like not eating carrots. And we find that Prabhupada had carrots. So, but anyways, here's a quote from Prabhupada's commentary. Okay, there's actually several quotes. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the regulative principles of devotional service compiled by Gopal Bhatta Goswami do not strictly follow our Vaishnava principles. Actually, Gopal Bhatta Goswami collected only a summary of the elaborate descriptions of Vaishnava regulative principles from the Hari Bhakti Vilas. It is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's opinion, however, that to follow the Hari Bhakti Vilas strictly is to actually follow the Vaishnava rituals in perfect order. He claims that the Smarta Samaj, which is strictly followed by caste brahmanas, has influenced portions that Gopal Bhatta Goswami collected from the original Hari Bhakti Vilas. So therefore we have Prabhupada who tells us, shows us what to apply from the Hari Bhakti Vilas and what not to apply. And of course, there's a reference here. It's that Prabhupada says it's better to consult the commentary of the Hari Bhakti Vilas if you really want to get into research. It's called the Dig Darshani Tika, which is written by Sanatana Goswami. So anyway, and another point is that if we get into all these details, then it may impede our presentation of Krishna consciousness to others. Here's Prabhupada, several quotes from Prabhupada. We want to show the world that Krishna's service is not stereotyped, one-sided. Krishna can be served from any position, provided one is willing to serve him. Krishna can be served and approached by businessmen, by lawyers, by scientists, artists, musicians, by philosophers, and here's an interesting one, even by thieves and rogues. Everyone. And that's a letter to Gargamuni, written 11th November 1969. And another quote from Prabhupada from the Srimad Bhagavatam 4.854 is quite interesting. The method of worship, chanting the mantra, preparing the forms of the Lord, is not stereotyped, nor is it exactly the same everywhere. This may be a quote that people are familiar with. It is specifically mentioned in this verse that one should take consideration of the time, place, and available conveniences. Our Krishna consciousness movement is going on throughout the entire world, and we also install deities in different centers. Sometimes our Indian friends, puffed up with concocted notions, criticize. This has not been done. That has not been done. But they forget this instruction of Narada Muni to one of the greatest Vaishnavas, Dhruva Maharaj. One has to consider the particular time, country, and conveniences. What is convenient in India may not be convenient in the Western countries. Those who are not actually in the line of acharyas or personally have no knowledge of how to act in the role of acharya unnecessarily criticize the activities of the Krishna consciousness movement in countries outside of India. The fact is that such critics cannot do anything personally to spread Krishna consciousness. If someone does go and preach, taking all risks and allowing all considerations for time and place, it might be that there are changes in the manner of worship. But that is not at all faulty according to Shastra. Srimad Vivaragava Acharya, an Acharya in the disciplic succession of Ramanuja Sampradaya, has remarked in his commentary that Chandalas, or conditioned souls who were born in lower than Shudra families, can also be initiated according to circumstances. Initiated in this particular context means Brahman initiation. You know, when people talk about initiation, Diksha, it doesn't mean Harinam. That is something basically that was started by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada. Initiation means Gayatri, second initiation. The formalities may be slightly changed here and there to make them Vaishnavas. Now, another memory that I heard last night was really interesting. That Prabhupada was sitting at a fire sacrifice for initiation, and the devotees were bringing out like maybe hundreds of different ingredients with gigantic quantities. Not gigantic, you know. This is a hyperbole, of course. You know, big quantities. And Prabhupada says, what are you wasting all this stuff for? You know, sometimes you have these abhisheks and you can fill like 3 or 4 50-gallon drums with the fruit juice in there. And actually, the fruit juice was never done in Abhishek traditionally. That was something that ISKCON just started to do, you know. You know, watermelon juice and papaya juice and everything like that. isn't it? That's not a, you know, you never hear about them doing that, like Akrura visiting Krishna and having watermelon juice poured all over his feet. But even we do that in this kind of, sometimes the gurus during their Vyasa Puja have watermelon juice poured over their feet. It's happened to me. I'm just thinking, you know, this is good milk. I mean, why? So Prabhupada, of course, the devotees use that as to teach the lesson that one should be very frugal in use of Krishna's resources. Things shouldn't be wasted. So Prabhupada, you know, Prabhupada kept things really simple. Like if you look at Prabhupada's fire sacrifice, it was basically, you know, the Mangalacharna prayers, you know, Om Vapavitra, and that was it. And chanting Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada also said the installation of the deities in Vrindavan was done by the kirtan. But he had the ritualistic brahmanas come because he wanted people to respect it. The temple is a bona fide temple. Otherwise, you know, Hare Krishna, the pure devotee calls the devotees to the deity to come. And the deity comes. I mean, basically, if you're a pure devotee, not many here, but if someone is a pure devotee, all they have to do is say, Krishna, please come. And if you're not authorized, you can do all the rituals and Krishna won't come. Like with that story I often tell about when I was with Prabhupada. The devotees said in a particular temple where they were disrespecting Vaishnavas, we just saw the deity. It wasn't one of our temples. And Prabhupada said, there's no deity there. There's no deity. And devotees said, you know, I saw the deity. And Prabhupada said, you heard what I said. There's no deity. You know, I remember we were just like flabbergasted, thrown against the wall. When Prabhupada makes a heavy statement like that, it's just like, it's like a hurricane, something like that. And then Prabhupada then gave an example, you know what, cracking nuts with Shalagram Shilas, with a Shalagram Shila. He quoted the Bengali for that. So therefore, we know which rules should be followed, which are not, because of the example of our acharya. You know, Tarko Pitista Shutina Vivina. One can study the Vedic literatures, which are multi-branched. You know, even Krishna says in the Gita, Trigunya Vishya Veda Nich, Trigunya Vavarjana, Nirdwan Vodnekter Sapasto, New Yoga Shemampan. The Vedas are mainly dealing with the three modes of material nature. They're many branched. And you know, what do you know? What do you follow? Do you eat a carrot? Should I? Shouldn't I? Should I? Should I? Or is it just a red carrot like they have in India? Or a pink carrot or a black carrot? Black carrot's all right. Or is red cabbage okay on Chaturmasha? Cabbage, you know, when you I was thinking like that, you know, it's just like Chaturmasha, we had the fast from greens, right? And so I was like, can I take a red cabbage? It's not green. It's not green. So, you know, we have a tendency to get too much into this. So here's some more quotes, actually. I like these quotes. Here's about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and his emphasis on preaching, and sometimes adjustments were made because of the emphasis on preaching, and Prabhupada did the same thing. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would fast on the Kadasi, not completely, until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then take a little fruit, and at night a glass of milk. So he didn't fast completely. Although some disciples were inclined to observe the Kadasi strictly by total abstinence from both food and drink or by taking only water, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur emphasized that doing the needful for preaching was more important than such rigid fasting. On one Ekadasi, most devotees remained in the mat to observe fasting, but Sripad Ashram Maharaj took anukalp, that means non-grain, prasadam, you know, very simple, like fruits and things like that, and went out to preach. Srila Saraswati Thakur commented, he has understood the principle of the Gaudiya Math. On another Ekadasi, Hayagriva Brahmachari was supposed to attend a speaking engagement, yet because he was feeling unwell, he opted to skip the program and join the other Math devotees in observing full fasting. When Srila Bhakti, this is actually from Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava. When Srila Saraswati Thakur was informed of this, he said, let him go immediately, eat and go. Let him immediately go. Just prior to Janmashtami one year, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur decided to visit Mathura shortly afterwards. He selected Hayagriva Brahmachari to go ahead to hire a suitable house and make other arrangements. Considering the long and strenuous journey his disciple would have to undergo, he asked his own cook to feed Hayagriva Prabhu a meal including rice, even though Janmashtami is to be strictly observed by full fasting. But both the cook and Hayagriva Prabhu hesitated. Hayagriva Prabhu was prepared to travel even though fasting, yet to honor his Guru Maharaj's order, he took Anukalp prasadam instead of rice. Interesting, isn't it? Once during Chaturmasha, some produce, this is a very interesting quote, from the Sri Chaitanya Math's cultivated field was sent to Sri Purushottam Math in Jagannath Puri. Among the preparations were vegetables proscribed, which means you're not supposed to take, during that period. Yet Srila Saraswati Thakur ordered that they be cooked, offered, and honored, explaining that they're originating from the holy Dham of Mayapur overread Chaturmasha restrictions. I mean, this is the mood of our acharyas. Try to understand this. And so, of course, Prabhupada, you know, the story I've told many times before, in Janmashtami, I was with Prabhupada at New Vrindavan. This was the time when Prabhupada was giving the Bhagavad Dharma discourses. On top of the hill, there was like a shed, you know, it was a big shed, tin shed on top of the hill, and they had to carry Prabhupada up on a palanquin because there was mud everywhere. You would walk, and the mud would be up, I mean, literally up to the knees in New Vrindavan. It was raining. So I remember, you know, of course, I didn't get a chance to carry Prabhupada, but I've seen the devotees carry Prabhupada. It was pretty ecstatic on his palanquin. Up the hill, Prabhupada would be giving Bhagavad Dharma discourses. So, on Janmashtami, Prabhupada said, you know, being very concerned that the devotees would be happy, he said, what's for prasadam? What is going to be for prasadam on Janmashtami? And devotees said, you know, just some breakfast, you know, like some juice or juice and fruits, you know, some boiled potatoes or something. Not oat water, you can't, that's great. Some boiled potatoes or something like that. And Prabhupada looked at the devotees. I remember that. And he said, no, I said, full feasting. So like at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, it was dark. You know, you didn't have like lights strung everywhere. It was like, this is a primitive jungle type of life. We didn't even have toilets at that time in New Vrindavan. There was a big ditch with some chemical in it. You know, long ditch. That was our toilet. Or there was a place where there was a drum that was emptied every 2 or 3 days with a forklift. But anyway, so it was an extremely primitive type of situation. And the devotees had to cook outside on wood fires. And there wasn't running water either. I remember that year, I was actually cooking with Shruta Kirti that year. And what we had to do is go out to the well and fill this big garbage pail with water that we drew up from, you know, the rope and the bucket and everything like that. It was fun when you were young. And I was cooking for Prabhupada with Shruta Kirti at that particular point. So Prabhupada said full feast, and then there was a gigantic feast. But of course, that evening, Prabhupada wouldn't let us eat until about 3 o'clock in the morning. Prabhupada kept us up. That's a famous story. Prabhupada kept us up, and we were all just like completely, well, in ecstasy, misery, or whatever, like that. That we were thinking, when, you know, it was like thinking, when am I going to see Krishna? So what am I going to eat? You know, intense longing like that. So that was another instance, and then, you know, we have other instances of, you know, rules being stretched. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there's the story that he arranged that when the Britishers would go to Mayapur, he would basically, they would feed them what they would normally eat, and then there's the story about rolling the biddies, the Indian cigarettes, biddies, whatever you say, for the workers who were constructing the temple. So you find these instances where people break the rules for the purpose of serving Krishna. And another instance, actually, there's so many instances that come to mind. In the pastimes of Krishna, this is, of course, similar to Ram's pastime. When the coward boys are feeding Krishna, they taste the food first. Can you imagine if I'm cooking for the deities and I have like my mother used to. My mother wasn't cooking for the deities, but she used to eat with the spoon. You go in the deity's kitchen and you take this big ladle. Tastes good. Needs a little more salt, like that. The Prabhupada instructed us when we cook for the deities, don't smell, don't taste, don't think of eating. You are cooking for Krishna's pleasure. Yet, you have the coward boys, it's a violation of the rules. The coward boys, instead of feeding Krishna first, they would taste the food, and what the tastiest things they would give to Krishna. Right? It's really interesting, isn't it? And nobody came and said, "You've broken the rules." and as I said, that's similar to the story of Shobhari in the Ramayana. The story of Shobhari in the Ramayana is that she was waiting to receive Lord Ram and Lakshman, and every day she would decorate the path, and just waiting. Fine. And she had all these berries that she was, or fruits, that she was saving for them. Of course, she picked them fresh every day. Not that she saved them in the refrigerator and froze them like we did. I freeze the fresh figs so I have them for the whole year. So anyway, she was, and then they came, and then she bit each one. And Lakshman was going, yuck! Lakshman has more rules and regulations. He was going, yuck! And Ram said, no, she's doing it with devotion. So basically, Ram was taking the remnants of Shobhari out of devotion. It's really interesting. So anyway, there's so many instances of adjustment. Another instance, which I don't have time to tell, is when the devotees, just really quickly, when the devotees were eating prasadam or food at someone's house, and the devotee noticed there was onions and garlic in the food. And the devotee said, well, there's onions and garlic. So just be quiet and eat. So, because there's a purpose of preaching. So Prabhupada's mood is there, and not that we can personally decide, just change things dramatically, but I think we have Prabhupada's example and mood, and like Prabhupada said, preaching is the essence, books are the base, purity is the force. Of course, the purity has to be there. That means that chanting, the morning program, if someone doesn't chant and doesn't go to the morning program, the purity is not there. Prabhupada laid down the line. What is the bottom line as far as our Krishna consciousness movement? Confirmed. Okay, so much for that. All right, thank you very much. All glorious to His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namano Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasnaya Bodhalaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Saminitino Krishna Prasnaya Bodhalaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Amenitino Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pacha Nivasesha Shunyavane Vasyachavades Vatarine Nivasesha Shunyavane Vasyachavades Vatarine Shri Krishna Jai Gita Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadana Siva Savade Gomata Vrindana Sri Krishna Sri Advaita Vasade Gomata Vrindana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadana Siva Sati Gaurabhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadana Siva Sati Gaurabhakta Vrinda Sri Advaita Gadana Siva Sati Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parabhakacharya also Teta Satashi Shima His Divine Grace Abhaya Charana Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nandakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Say Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shridvaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Sayam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuram Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamari Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai, Sambhaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Gaur. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees.